Hi everyone, I'm Julianne Holt-Lunstad. I am so grateful to be here with you today. Although I wish I was in person, I will see you all tomorrow at the working group. Perhaps this can be somewhat of an object lesson in terms of the potential benefits of using technologies to connect, but also, of course, the limits. And of course, it would be far more ideal to be with you. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, my area of expertise is on the protective effects of being socially connected and the risks associated with isolation and loneliness and other forms of lacking connection. I have been doing this work for and scientific research on this topic for more than 2 decades now. So of course, I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak to you about this important topic. I'm going to try and very quickly sum up some of the key findings of what we know about this and its relevance to AI, but more importantly, some of the questions that it raises. So just by way of introduction, there are increasing concerns about social connection, isolation, and loneliness as trends worldwide suggest we are becoming less socially connected. And there's evidence of severe consequences to well-being, health, safety, prosperity, and even our lifespans. These consequences are relevant not only to us as individuals, but to communities as well. So simply put, those who are more socially connected are happier, healthier, function better, and live longer than those who lack connection. Importantly, because of these very widespread and potentially severe kinds of consequences, there is a lot of attention around a loneliness crisis. But we are facing many societal crises, including a mental health crisis, an environmental crisis, political polarization, and so much more. But what I hope to help you recognize is that social disconnection may be at the core of all of these and a root cause of each of these. And social connection may be help us address each of these societal crises. So these trends and consequences are becoming increasingly relevant as social technologies continue to develop, especially AI. It's also really important to note that loneliness, social connection, these are not just emotional or psychological states. They are deeply tied to our biology, and any technology, including AI, must navigate this complex social and biological space. So one of the key fundamental things to understand in all of this is that social connections are a fundamental human need, just as food, water, and shelter. Humans are one of the most vulnerable species at birth. If left alone, we would literally die. But throughout human history, we have needed to rely upon others for our survival. And so across human species in nature, including humans, we see that being part of a group is essential to survival. This includes not only protection against various threats to safety, but also the pooling of resources and efficiencies to meet the demands of everyday life. And so across species, we see that the social environment is one of the strongest predictors of survival, also including causally influencing behavior and biology regulation to adapt to these various situations. And so social connection continues current day to be a critical and strong predictor of survival and better functioning in humans. So given that this is so closely tied to survival, and the biggest motive of any species is to survive, we need to think about this in that context. It may be helpful to also help us recognize where loneliness fits in all of this. So just like hunger and thirst, loneliness may be thought of as an adaptive biological signal. It's a distressing feeling that motivates us to meet a biological need, in this case, to reconnect socially. So in this sense, loneliness can be thought of as a symptom or a signal, whereas isolation can be thought of as an indicator of objectively lacking a biological need. Now, these distinctions are very important because we don't want to just mask the symptom. Can you imagine if we reduced hunger without access to food, or reduced loneliness without access to water? In both of these cases, we would be malnourished or dehydrated, leading to poor deteriorations in health and potentially ultimately death. So similarly, we cannot just mask this symptom without meeting that actual biological need. Now, I understand this as an imperfect analogy to food, but I think it's useful to help us think about and acknowledge these the lessons learned here. Similarly, if we extend this analogy, quality is important. And so just as food is essential to survival, quality matters when it comes to our relationships. And so this can happen in two ways. So just like food can spoil and make us sick, poor quality relationships, those that are full of conflict, strain, and abuse, can actually be associated with greater risk. But also our foods vary in terms of their quality, nutrient quality, and the extent to which we can actually meet our needs. And so just as ultra processed foods may mimic food, we need to really think about artificial forms of socially connected or socially connecting, and to what extent are they just mimicking social connection rather than providing us with the key kinds of nutrients that we need. Now, if we extend this a little bit further, we could think of AI and other kinds of technologies as supplements. So identifying key nutrients that might be missing, that we might add in, but we also then, need to be careful because, of course, we cannot survive on supplements alone, and nor have adding supplements to processed foods been very successful. So we just need to really kind of think about, to what extent processed foods and processed connections might have any kind of analogous kinds of roles in terms of our health and well-being. And so as we consider the role of AI, we need to consider how it meets our biological needs and to what extent it might potentially further distance us from human connection. I should emphasize that social connection is not a luxury. It's not something that's just simply nice to have. It is a fundamental biological need. And so we do need to think carefully about the role of AI to ensure that it complements rather than replaces the deep social bonds that are essential. So to what extent can AI serve as a tool to facilitate social connections that help meet these needs, or does it risk further distancing us from genuine human connection? And I think most importantly is if it can do both, as we've seen with other technologies where it has both benefits and harms, how can we put in appropriate safeguards? I just want to end by emphasizing that the evidence points to social connection as beneficial is incredibly complex. fulfilling a variety of kinds of needs and goals, and influencing a host of outcomes for both good and bad. So as we integrate into AI into our lives, we must be aware of the balance between human and artificial connection to avoid further exacerbation of declines in social connection. Lastly, I want to emphasize how important there is for the need for science as we move forward. Not only science in guiding the development and design of new kinds of applications and approaches, but how incredibly important it is to evaluate not only the effectiveness, but potential harms before these are scaled. Just like non-tech items or interventions, we cannot just assume benefits. And in fact, data shows that when we look at various kinds of treatments, 95% of the time they fail and are unsuccessful. So we do need to evaluate them. Nor can we assume that even if we do see benefits, that they don't come with corresponding harms. So we need to be very vigilant to any kinds of unintended consequences. So with that, I'm excited to be part of the discussion tomorrow, and hope that that will be incredibly productive. Thank you.